Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to our ICP and IDNO ICE workshop. I'll just go through a little bit of housekeeping before I drop into the agenda. So the webinar should take about an hour to an hour and a half. We'd have a number of people presenting today. We will have lots of opportunities for people to ask questions. If you do have any questions throughout the presentations, if you can either raise your hand or put your question into the chat, we will make sure we come to you at an appropriate time. So in terms of what we're covering today, first on the agenda is a bit of an update on our ICE work plan. So I can give you just an overview of where we're up to on each of those and a little bit more detail on our EV strategy and our bilateral connections agreements. Then Jonathan Cropper will be taking us through onboarding. So this is one of our commitments in this year's plan. So we'll be going through what we're thinking in terms of that, and we will be looking for your feedback on what Jonathan's saying. So we'll be dropping into breakout rooms to have a bit of a discussion on that topic. Then we have Chloe, who's joining us to talk about the Training Academy, both in terms of what we offer at the Training Academy and in terms of the inspection and monitoring process. And then Brian Hoy will be taking us through our future business plans, talking about our connection strategy for 23 to 28 and giving you a bit of update on competition test and Ofgem's significant code review. And then finally, we'll wrap up any final questions and close the webinar. So in terms of people on the webinar today, we have Jonathan Cropper, who I'm sure most of you know, who's a delivery manager with contracts. We have Martin Edmondson, who is head of business connections, and we have Brian Hoy, head of market regulation. Joe has been replaced last minute by Chloe McGrath, who'll be doing the presentation, and there's myself, and Amy is not with us today, but we do also have John Carlisle, who deals with the EHV works. So I'm sure many of you also know John. So in terms of our work plan this year, so this is our list of commitments that we've made to ICPs and IDNOs of improvements that we will look to make, or levels of performance that we will achieve in the year. So the very first one is regarding our onboarding. So this is to provide a simple resource for new ICPs and potentially new staff within existing ICPs, to give you some information and guidance and support if you're dealing with this for the first time. But that will be covered in today's session. Next commitment is to run 2 self-determination point of connection training sessions for ICPs. We've actually got our first one planned for tomorrow, and I know some of you have signed up to join us then. We will also be running a second one in November as well. So if you can't make tomorrow, then there will be further opportunities. The next commitment is about providing webinars on policy topics. So this is picking out those top policies that we are updating that are relevant for ICPs and IDNOs, and providing webinars to give you that information. So at the moment there are none advertised. We will be putting those in the diary shortly. If, however, there are any policies that or existing policies and you're looking for a bit more information on, or a refresher, then let us know. We can rerun webinars on existing policies, but they're primarily, the commitment is around changes to our policies. And then the last one on this page is a commitment to hold a minimum of 3 engagement opportunities, of which this is one. On this one, we've obviously got today's, and we also have a further one planned in October and another one planned for February. And we will also do ad hoc webinars as and when in between those dates. The second part of this commitment is to provide surgery sessions. So this is something we offer where if you're wanting to talk about, say, project specific or looking at options, you can put a request in to have a one-on-one meeting with us. And we've targeted to hold those within 10 working days, the request. We're delighted to say that so far this year, we've been delivering those within 2 working days. So we are on track with that. And then moving on to our KPIs. So this is around how long it takes us to provide you with information. So as you can see, the first 2 are amber. We are slightly over target on those, but it is only marginal, and we are confident that we will bring those back under our targets, certainly before the year ends, if not very much sooner than that.
You won't now know.
Excuse me. I should just, if you can ask you to remain on mute. We've also got one on design approvals, and we're on target with that. And we've got time to connect, which you can see we're on target. The new one that we have this year is relating to BCAs, which is bilateral connection agreements, and we do have a slide on that in just a moment. But we're currently working at 9 days against a target of 10. Okay, so another of our commitments is around our EB strategy, and the commitment is to communicate the strategy with yourselves and to provide you with updates. So we produced our EB strategy, and this sets out our ambitions for helping people transition from into DSO and to enable electric vehicles in our patch. The strategy went out to consultation last year, and we've incorporated the feedback we received from that in our strategy, which was published earlier this year. And you can see we have a link there, which will be shared with you when we send the slides out. So would recommend you have a look at that and provide any feedback that you have. And then in terms of the bilateral connection agreement update, Jonathan, do you want to drop in?
I certainly can, yes. Thank you, Hannah. Good afternoon, everybody. So just a quick update on the BCA. For those that are not familiar with these terminologies yet, a BCA, a bilateral connection agreement, is basically an agreement which agrees the load and the interface between a DNO and an IDNO network. So any of your schemes that involve IDNOs will always require a BCA, a connection agreement with that IDNO, which documents that interface. Bilateral adoption agreements, these are site-specific. It's a schedule of work that documents what you'll be delivering, when you'll be delivering it, and what it is specific to that scheme that ENWL will be adopting as part of that delivery. So currently we introduced the SLAs back end of 2020, and we aimed and committed to try and speed up the process in a number of ways. So one of the things that we introduced there was the ability for you to self-serve these agreements, connection and adoption agreements. So we published the templates to allow you to submit those alongside your design submission and reduce your overall delivery timescales. It was currently taking us around about 10 working days to produce adoption agreements, connection agreements. So the uptake so far has been very encouraging, and the quality of the submitted templates has certainly been improving over the last few months. I know I've probably spoken to quite a few of you, and I've spoken to many ICPs, and so have the team. Just talking you through the process itself, how the templates fit together, and what information is required where. There's also some handy user guides that we've published alongside the templates on the web. And basically, as I said, by submitting them up front, the whole purpose of this was that you can reduce your overall delivery timescales by up to 5 days for a connection agreement and 0 working days for an adoption agreement, because we'll look at that during the design approval process, and if all's well, you can basically complete the template and share it with your customer to sign and return. Any questions just on that? I didn't plan on any questions, but anybody got any questions just before we move on? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. So what I was in ICE, the whole point of these engagement events is one to give you information, but also to hear your feedback. So if you do have any comments or anything you want to discuss after the session, please get in touch with myself or Amy or any of the participants on the webinar. What I have done is put a link on the chat with a survey where we're asking you to rate each of the presentations we do, with a view to hopefully improving as we go forwards. The other thing I will do at the end of the session is ask a question about these events in the future. So I did say we've got planned an event in October and another one in February. Working on the assumption that the October one will again be online, but I'd like to hear your thoughts in terms of whether or not we look to go back to some face-to-face ones perhaps in the spring. Obviously, want to make sure that whatever we offer is suitable and useful for yourselves. So it'd be good to hear your thoughts on whether that would be something you'd be interested in us doing, or whether you prefer us to stay online. So I'll come to you at the end of the session, but please do have a think about that. And without further ado, I shall hand over to Jonathan to take on the onboarding. Do you want to take control, Jonathan? You're on mute.
Let me have a go at that. Hang on. Got it. Okay, right. Welcome again. So yeah, onboarding. As Hannah said, we've set a commitment, ICE commitment this year to improve our onboarding services and the processes surrounding that. Let's start at the beginning. I thought the easiest thing to do would be do a dictionary definition, just so we're all clear on what we mean by onboarding. Onboarding, according to the dictionary, is the action or the process of integrating either a new employee into an organisation or familiarising new customers or clients with the products and services that organisation offers. So very simple, high-level term. That's what onboarding means. So beyond that, what do we actually mean? Why do we need to review our onboarding processes? Well, part of being in this role for the last sort of 12-18 months, I've realised that ICPs have lots of different requirements. We have ICPs that only want to deliver street works and street lighting, street furniture. And we also have ICPs that want to deliver large generation schemes and everything in between. So we can't clearly onboard and the interaction that we have with those ICPs can't be the same for all of them because they've got different requirements. So what we've seen is there is lots of information on the web already. You know, we've developed the information that's on the ICP pages on our website over many years. But I think the consequence of that is it's probably in multiple locations. We haven't actually always documented the end-to-end process. And sometimes it's just not clear, certainly if it's the first time that you've come across our website and you're not familiar with it. So some of the feedback that we've had already, just by speaking to ICPs, is that there's many of you struggle to find the information and struggle to self-serve the information, which then results in lots of questions. You know, lots of questions coming into us, either to the POC engineer or into competition and connections team or the design approvers. And all these are, you know, straightforward questions many of the time that could be self-served and answered yourself. And as it says at the bottom there, you know, carrying on from that dictionary definition, if we get the onboarding process right, it can make a huge difference. I think long-term performance of a new employee, customer or client. So the onboarding is really the first interaction with us. And if we can get that process right, I think it will smooth the overall journey and any other future interactions with us. So really important part of the process. There we go, got it across. Okay, so what we're looking to do, first thing is, it's not working very well, Hannah. How do I get these bullet points to come up?
You should just click next.
Hang on. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I'm clicking the wrong thing. Okay, so what we're looking to do, we're looking to review and improve the self-serve information, as I said previously, that's available to yourselves. We're looking to review and improve the onboarding information and the processes surrounding that onboarding process. We're looking to do a review of all the existing ICPs that are working on our network, just to ensure that we've got all our records up to date, that we've had all those correct interactions with yourself, that we've captured all that information and it's still current. Finally, we're going to review and improve our internal onboarding communications, and those will be between our academy teams, between system operations, and between the connection teams as well, just to ensure we're all understand, you know, when an ICP approaches us, that we all are clear that they've been through the onboarding process, they understand those processes, and we've captured all the data that we need to start our relationship with you. So very high level, what might this process look like? We're asking at the moment, we're thinking along the lines, it's just a simple register an interest for a new ICP. So we need some way of capturing that and expressing how you do that to yourselves. We'll interact with you following that interest by some sort of onboarding meeting. So we'll have a conversation with you, whether that's a Teams meeting face-to-face going forward in the future. But that will be between connections team and the system operations team, maybe even members of the academy. We'll ensure that important information is captured during that process, so that we ensure that you're registered on the audit database, the MD UK database. That's the national audit database, for those that aren't familiar with it. We'll ensure that you've completed and returned your master adoption agreement, so you're on board with our terms and conditions, and also you're set up for that adoption agreement process, the schedule of work process that I mentioned earlier. And following all that, you should be ready to go. You should be all ready to deliver onto our network. Oh, is that a question? Were we taking questions now, or Hannah, or do you want to?
So we do have a question from Saad around the bilateral adoption agreements and master adoption agreements. Do you want to pick that up now or at the end?
Shall we pick it up now? Do you want to ask quickly, Saad, what the actual question is?
Sorry, I didn't put the question in the right time when you were talking about BA. Well, we can come at it later date. I just wanted to put it there before I forget it myself.
Okay, all right, we'll capture it and pick it up later on. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so I mentioned about this onboarding process, this conversation, the onboarding meeting. So what's the type of things that we're going to be capturing there? Well, clearly we need contact name, address, contact number for somebody probably senior in the organisation who would be responsible for their staff working within our network. We need to capture what type of authorization that you're looking to secure with us. Are you going to be self-authorizing your own staff, or are they all going to be ENWL authorized, and therefore we just need to check their authorization with our academy. Clearly we need to confirm your NERS accreditation, and understand the type and scope of work that you're going to be delivering. As I said earlier, some people just want to deliver street furniture. Some people want to deliver everything in between that and an EHV generation scheme. And that's in line with Code of Practice 635. There's an appendix in there which details the type and scope of works that we would anticipate an ICP would be liaising with us on. We need just to capture some commercial details just to make sure that you're set up on our system, just for auditing purposes, so that we can build for audits, etc., things like that. As I said before, absolutely need to make sure you're registered on MD UK, so when we do come out on audit, you're known to our system. The auditors can continue that process and make sure it's completed. And also it gives you the opportunity to respond to those to any audit actions through the MD UK system. And we just need to make sure that you've completed your adoption agreement, your master adoption agreement, and it's been signed up front in advance of any works. Okay, so now we get to the feedback section. I think we alluded to it earlier. Hannah's going to arrange some breakout rooms for us. We've got some very simple questions. I think we're intending 10 or 15 minutes, aren't we, Hannah? Just to break out into smaller groups. We'll ask you some questions around your experiences of onboarding, and we'll just capture the feedback as part of our commitment to you. Okay, so I'll hand back over to you, Hannah.
Okay, I am going to put people into rooms. As Jonathan says, this is something we're developing, and we want to make sure that it's suitable for everyone. So now's your opportunity to kind of steer us in the right direction. Give us some feedback on what Jonathan's proposed, and let us know if we're missing anything or if there's anything we can learn from your experience perhaps elsewhere. So we have 3 rooms. First room is with Brian and Chloe, and second room is with Martin and John. and then the third room is with Jonathan. I'll be dropping into rooms just to check on the timing, but I'm not gonna be hosting a room. So if you're all ready, I am going to start the rooms now. It will take a few seconds for it to work. So I think we're still bringing people out of all the rooms. Make sure we're sharing. Okay, welcome back. Have we got everyone back in? I think we have. So just reloading the slides. Didn't realise they would drop off when I brought you back in. So bear with us a second. Was that useful? Anyone, any comments or thoughts from people? Anyone want to go through what was the key points that were discussed in their rooms?
But we did have a question. Well, Emma had a question. Possibly Brian, you might be able to help us with it on occupancy leases for EV installations. And I didn't have a response or have any knowledge about it. Is that, Emma, do you want to ask your question again? See if Brian has anything.
Yeah, sure. Well, we dedicated sort of ICP to EV when you were talking about ICPs that dedicate in a specific sector. And we undertake everything from HV to sort of LV, small installations, to sort of big ultra all electric hubs, forecourts, etc. And we were approached by UKPN about the occupancy lease to help speed up the obviously legal process, particularly say a BP forecourt where BP potentially own the land, or they could have a long lease on the land, and they've say got a dedicated substation to go on to feed dedicated EV installation on to electrify a forecourt. So they've bought out this occupancy lease. It's a bit like a way leave. It costs about £1,000 to do, takes about a week to instruct rather than a full substation lease. Northern Power Grid have also taken the same basis of that approach of an occupancy lease. So it has a dramatic effect to speeding up installations specific to EV. So I just wondered what ENW's approach was to sort of speeding up legals and easing legals, specifically in EV, to facilitate connections.
Yeah, I must admit, I've not come across that one before. I mean, if you've got a copy of it and you can send us a copy of it, we can certainly have a look at it. So I don't know whether it's been something that, you know, there are some through the ENA, some forums where they look at all the kind of way leaving consents issues. So I don't know whether that's been brought up there. But we've got kind of, you know, it sounds like maybe similar to arrangements we have with some of the IDNO sites where we kind of take a subsidiary sort of lease to the main one. But so if you've got an example, I can pass it through to our colleagues and I can see.
Were these a reduced term lease as well, like 10 years rather than the consistent the 99 years?
There can be. So say BP aren't potentially the landowner, say they're just a 10-year leaseholder on the land, then it'd be a bit like a way leave. The occupational lease will sit for the 10-year lease period, but an assumption, and the landowner will sign that lease. So it's not like a full substation, you know, peppercorn lease that you would normally undertake. But that would only last for the 10 years, with the assumption then at the 10-year point when BP vacate that site, that those EV charges will be disconnected and therefore the substation disconnected, therefore no requirement for the lease. But I certainly have a pack, and I have the details of that template I can send you directly from UKPN to take a look at.
Yeah, no, that'd be good. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'm aware of time, so thank you ever so much for all your feedback. All the facilitators in the rooms will be collating all the comments and thoughts, and we'll be looking to obviously make sure that we cover off what's been raised in those rooms. So thank you. I think I will remain driving. Jonathan, I think this last slide was just some references
Yeah, it was. Yeah, just some useful reading for the onboarding process. So you know, the first two go without saying. Those are the NERS scheme and the competition code in connection code of practice. Just a couple of links for that. And then when we're talking about authorizations, those are the two main documents within code of practice that refer to the authorization process and the types of authorization, especially 635 authorizations for ICPs. Thank you.
Okay, without further ado, I shall hand over to Chloe to do the Training Academy update. Would you like to take control, Chloe?
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you.
So hi everybody, I'm just going to quickly talk you through a bit of an update on the Training Academy and basically what we do and what we can offer. So about 2 years ago now, 18 months, 2 years ago, we introduced a new application form. So the thought process behind this was, at the time we had quite a few we had like a training application form, an authorization application form, an application form for renewals, and they were all a bit disjointed. So we created sort of a one-stop shop. So you can apply for all of your training and authorization requests in one form, one go, and then as an academy, the team will monitor your request to ensure you're moved through the relevant stages of application. So the form split out into 4 sections. The first section is all to do with the applicant and line manager details. So line manager in your case would be the company details, and approving manager. So this isn't necessarily relevant for you, the approving manager, but if you are working on behalf of a specific person within ENW, their approval is always good, just so we know who to refer any request back to. Section 2 is for training. Section 3 is for training and authorization requests. So this is where you want to gain an ENW authorization. And then section 4 is for various things such as renewals. So we issue authorizations for a certain period of time. After that time, you have to sit a refresher, and then you would have your authorization renewed for a set period of time again. Any codes that you want withdrawing, so you might have held them and not do the work again and need them to come off your authorization. Or similarly, if you have new starters that join the business from a different company, we can change their authorization from the old company name into your company name in section 4. So if I just talk you through basically the basic route to authorization. So we ask that you send the request form alongside sort of evidence of work. This is basically so we can decide on the best route to authorization for you. Sometimes if people have got other DNO experience or certain levels of authorization, they might have done HNCs, sitting guilds, that kind of thing. They might not necessarily need to start at the beginning of this process. They might have done the basic training that's needed for that sort of job role. So we ask for, like I said, you to send over a request form alongside any relevant other DNO experience, and then we will go through the paperwork and we will sort of agree a route for you. Like I said, it might not start at the bottom, at the front. It might start at, say, a trade test. So you miss the whole training aspect. We might just need you to come in and sort of assess your knowledge and ensure that you are working to the same practices that ENW use. So just if the person that you want authorising doesn't have experience and is sort of a new starter, then they would start at the beginning. So they would complete initial training. Again, this doesn't necessarily need to be done by ENWL. We have quite a lot of contractors and ICPs who will do the initial training elsewhere, and then they will just send us evidence of that training. A lot of our authorisations require some on-job training. So basically, when you've done a course, you will go out with what we call a P code. It's basically just the authorisation to do a specific job under the supervision of an already authorised person. Just gives a bit more experience on what you're being authorised to do. We ask all contractors and ICPs to come in for a trade test. This is so that we, like I said, we can ensure that we are all following the same working practices. We're all working to exactly the same practices. A lot of our training requires individuals to sit what we call a CAG paper. It's an online assessment. Again, it's just another way of us testing the knowledge and making sure that we are authorising people who are competent for the role. And then most authorisation codes require an interview. So this is usually with one of our system ops engineers. They will use the evidence from the trade test, the assessment, and they will have further questions, just again to ensure that the person that we are authorising is competent for role. And then you will be your individual will be authorised to do a specific job role. Like I said, all of our authorisations are only active for a certain period of time. Most of them are on a 5-year basis, but they range from 1 to 5 years. So depending on what authorisation your employee wishes to gain, we will require them to do a refresher at a set period of time. Now we run a report annually. It runs for the financial year. So we will advise you before the April of that financial year of who in your workforce is due a refresher. Some of these refreshers, if they are to do with an authorisation code, we will put dates into the calendar and invite them to come and sit on one of our courses. But there are certain things that we need people to keep in date that aren't managed internally. Things like first aid. So for everybody authorised within the company who holds an authorisation code, they need a valid first aid certificate. So this is more down to you as a company to monitor this and ensure that when somebody's first aid is due, they've sat the relevant refresher and you've got the certificate to us before that expiry date. Because if somebody goes over an expiry date for things like first aid, unfortunately their authorisation will be withdrawn pending a new first aid certificate. But like I said, anything internally, we will plan dates and invite you back to sit one of our courses. And if your employee is successful in passing the course, we will renew their authorisation for the set period of time. So whether again it's 1 to 5 years and the process starts again. Just as a note, if your employee fails one of our internally monitored refreshers, usually we allow them 2 attempts to resit it. So usually they have the first attempt. If they fail it, they have another attempt to sit the refresher. Most of our refreshers are like an online assessment, so they'll have another opportunity to sit the online assessment. If they fail to achieve the pass rate twice, then we'll come back to you to discuss the next steps. Sometimes it's retraining, sometimes it's a trade test. In some cases, they might just be able to do another authorisation paper. And then just lastly on this slide, we ask that if you have employees who leave your company, that you notify us at the first available time, just so that we can ensure that our records are kept up to date. So if there is an incident involving that person, we're not reporting it to you, we're reporting it to the correct company. And if your employee holds items such as safety rules or substation keys, we ask that you return them again at the earliest opportunity, so that we can reissue them if that employee moves on. And while we're just on with leavers, we've introduced a process for employees who have been dismissed for gross misconduct. Now we've introduced this across the board, so for internal staff, ENW contractors and yourselves, we ask that you advise us if an individual you have put forward for authorisation has been previously dismissed for gross misconduct by your authorisation or a previous employer, just so that we can ensure that we are only authorising people to work on the network who can work safely. So it is your duty to be aware of the employment record of your existing staff and any new starters, and hence any such disciplinary issues. If one of your employees who is authorised to work on a network is dismissed for gross misconduct, you must advise us immediately of the dismissal. We will withdraw authorisation of that individual pending a review of the circumstances of his dismissal. We require you to respond promptly to requests for additional details and remind you of your duty to provide accurate information. It is in all of our interests to ensure that those working on our network do so safely and to the benefit of our customers. The email address is there at the bottom. It's theacademy@enw.co.uk. So if you do dismiss anybody or you employ anybody who has been dismissed of gross misconduct, please just inform us, and we can discuss it in further detail at that point. And then these are just, for any of you that don't know, examples of gross misconduct. These are them. So theft, fraud, physical violence, deliberate and serious damage to property. Again, you can go through all of these when you get the slide sent out. And any general inquiries, one-to-one meetings, if you wish to contact us, the email address is there and there's the generic Academy phone number. Questions?
Nothing in the chat just yet.
No. I'll wait a minute and then I'll move on. Oh, Jason. Can I unmute him? Jason, do you want to turn your mic on, then you can ask the question?
Sorry, Chloe.
It's all right.
Just got a couple of questions. Might be yourself that can answer it, or it could be for some of the other people on the panel. Just going back to slide 21, there's no reference on slide 21 to the pre-trade test. Is that something that you're still enforcing?
The what, sorry?
The pre-trade test.
So the training course.
Yeah, so basically what we've always been told,
yeah,
is that if we have training undertaken at a third-party provider,
yeah,
that once we've done that training, we then have to do a pre-trade test with ENW before we then book onto a... Sorry?
To get you on job P codes, so you can do some on-job work.
Yes.
Yeah, so we've put it as sort of a simplified route.
Right.
With the so for the most part, people will come, do training, they'll get a P code after the training, then they'll do a trade test to gain the code in full.
Yes.
Sometimes if you have done your experience elsewhere, rightly so, we might ask you to come in for a trade test to test your knowledge or test the person who are employing's knowledge. We may then feel like they need to do some more on-job experience and get a little bit more on-site experience, and then ask them to come back for a further trade test. Just
no, that's
to interview.
That's superb. It's not something that I disagree with at all. I was just making sure that that was the case, because I had been in talks with John Lee, and he said that he was potentially looking in the future, certainly with some of the key training providers, of maybe being in a position where maybe an ENW representative from the academy could go to these
Yeah.
other bodies, see the lads carrying out the training, which might negate the pre-trade test?
Potentially. I mean, I don't know what is in John's pipeline.
Right.
It might be something that he's looking at, but for the minute, I mean, that was a simplified way of doing it. Sometimes you might have to be trade tested for us to, like I said, test your knowledge, and then dependent on how we feel your knowledge is, ask you to go away, get a little bit more experience and come back.
Superb. The other question really was, like I say, I suppose it's more for ENW as a whole, and just throwing it out there, because I would like some sort of like feedback on what other people's thoughts are. But we are looking to take on a couple of apprentices this year, jointing apprentices, and one thing that we're constantly finding we're locking horns with